Hello, and welcome to The Connection. This podcast is about understanding and building the connection we have with others and with ourselves. I hope that through this podcast, you'll be able to have more joy and fulfillment in your life. I'm your host, Jared Hurst. This week, I wanted to talk with you about something that's been on my mind a lot lately, something that is starting to really become a part of who I am and what I want to create. And that is living a life by faith and inspiration. I know if you're not a religious person, that can seem a little bit off-putting. It can seem like this isn't for me. But I promise you that I will make this relevant to you regardless of your belief systems and regardless of how you look at the world. I believe that you will be able to see that this is something that can help benefit your life regardless of how you look at things. So, without further ado, how can faith and inspiration lead me in my life? How can it help me in my life and help me to have greater joy and more fulfillment? I want you to think back at your life. Have you ever had a time in your life where you've been going through it and you felt an inspiration? You felt a nudge. You felt a strong compulsion to do something that didn't make any sense to you. You've had something like that, right? You've had times where you thought, I should call this person. And you second guess yourself. You think to yourself, no, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I do that? You've had times where you felt inspired to go do an activity or drop off cookies or check in on somebody. And you may have even followed through with that and had times where you followed through on this inspiration and nothing transpired from it, or at least nothing that you can easily see has come from it. But I have started to realize that as I live my life by inspiration, and as I start to listen to those promptings, that more often than not, it helps my life out. I've talked with you a little bit about Yin on Fire, this event that I went to. It was a 3 or 4 day retreat down in Cedar City, Utah. Before I went on that experience, I had this moment. I was driving home from looking at a house up in Midway for a client, and while I was driving, I felt inspired that I should go over and take a walk through the park at Liberty Park in Salt Lake. And that's not super unusual because I love Liberty Park. It's like this sanctuary for me. I feel very at peace and at home when I'm there. And I'm taking a walk around the park, and while I'm taking a walk around the park, I just felt this desire to look to my left. And I looked to my left, and I saw this route that I'd never taken before. And as soon as I looked at that route and I saw this other way, I just felt this inspiration inside of me, this voice almost that said that I should go that direction. And so I decided that I was going to follow it, and I went that way. I went down, I turned around a corner, and as soon as I turned a corner, I saw a woman on a bench with a book. And as soon as I saw her, I knew that that was the reason why I was meant to go that direction. I had no idea why, but I knew that she was that reason. So as I approached her, I was thinking about saying something, and before I said anything, I was probably still like a good 100 feet away. She put down her book, she looked up at me, and gave me a great big smile and started talking to me. We talked for about 15 minutes, and we were talking about life. We were talking about our creative passions and the reason why we wanted to do the things that we wanted to do in the world. I told her a little bit about this event that I was going to, and she asked me a question. And as soon as I heard this question, I knew that's why I was meant to talk to her. Outside of the reasons why I think maybe she was meant to talk to me, because I feel like I was able to help her. And she asked me, she said, what is your intention and your reason for going to this event? Like, what is it that you're planning to learn? What is it that you plan to take from this? And I have known for a very long time that setting an intention before we go to a conference or a meeting is a powerful way for us to find what we're looking for. Our mind is programmed and says, you want this? Let me find it. And I hadn't thought about that yet for that event. And so I set an intention, and I went down to my conference. And as soon as I got to my conference, the very first workshop I went to, they immediately started talking about things that I found relevant to my intention. It was like that first workshop was tailored exactly for what I needed and exactly for what I'd asked for. And over the upcoming days, I actually had moments where I was trying to find people. And I said to myself, why don't I continue to act on this inspiration? And I closed my eyes and said, where can I find so-and-so? I had 3 different opportunities, and all 3 times I felt a pull towards a direction, started walking that way, and ran into that person. Crazy, right? I am very much a logical, cerebral person, and I'm somebody that I look at science and I try to find an explanation for things, but I don't have a great logical explanation for that. I have thought about it, and I've thought that maybe that somewhere my subconscious mind looked at it and said, well, you're most likely to find this person here or there, and I've thought about those kind of things. So I can maybe find a scientific-y reason why I was inspired to go that direction. But then I've continued to have event after event after event over the last 2 months happen. As I've continued to live a life by inspiration, as I've continued to try and seek that inner knowing, that inner inspiration of what I should do in different events, I have had so many experiences that have led me down paths that I would not have taken. Now, if you're not a religious person, you may look at that and say, well, that's a great coincidence, or your mind knew what to do. And maybe that's the case. Maybe that is the case. But it has helped me to develop a faith which I have not had recently. I have struggled with the way that I look at the world. I have struggled with having things fall apart and experiences happen, times where I have felt completely alone. And I have felt like there is nobody there listening. But then as I have looked back at my life, I can see evidence that there is something greater than me that is looking out for me and is helping me. There's been times where I have been alone, and I was meant to be alone. I was meant to feel that way so that I could grow in ways that I couldn't otherwise. And with these experiences and things that have transpired, I have felt like there is something greater than me. There is something that loves me and cares for me. I choose to call that God. Some people call it the universe. Some people call it law of attraction. You can name it whatever you choose to name it. And what I truly believe that each person has the right to do what's best for them, to believe what's best for them. But I believe these are things that can help you regardless of how you look at the world. Learning to trust your gut instinct, your intuition, or if you're religious, inspiration, whatever you choose to call it. There is a power that comes from choosing to listen to that voice and then following that. And there's going to be times where you follow that voice and it feels like nothing is happening. It feels like there's no reason why you did it. But the more you listen for it, the more you will find it, and the more it will affect your life. The other thing that I really want to talk about is faith. Now, I've talked recently on my podcast about faith and how faith can help us work through different experiences. There's a man that I absolutely love. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. His name is Bob Proctor. I loved Bob. He was a good man. I never got to meet him. Only saw his seminars and the things that he talked about, but I could just tell that I liked him. And Bob talked about how that when we have fear, the best way to combat that is faith and belief. And it makes so much sense. So much sense. When you think about it, if you believe that something positive is going to happen, you're less scared. Your fear diminishes because you believe that a positive outcome is going to happen. Fear is really just worry that something negative is going to happen in our lives. So how can you use faith in your life? if you're religious, if you're not religious, how can you use that to help you? And really, another word for faith is just belief. If you've ever done something, let's say the first time you had a job, you remember that? Do you remember the first job you ever had? I'm pretty confident that no matter what that job was, no matter what your experience was, you felt nervous. You felt scared because you were worried that you were going to make a mistake. You were worried that something bad was going to happen. And you weren't confident because you weren't yet competent at what you were doing. Now you look at that same job, and after a month, 2 months, maybe a couple weeks, maybe a couple years, you started to feel confident. You had belief that even if things didn't go well, you would be able to handle those bad things, those challenges that came, because you had experienced them. The more experience you had, the more your belief in having a positive outcome. Now, let's say you're doing something new for the first time. Have you ever done something new for the first time and then you had an expert with you? Somebody that you knew was going to guide you and take care of you. Somebody that had experience. Their experience gave you faith, gave you belief. So personal experience can give you faith. Somebody else that's with you can give you belief, can give you faith. And that's one of the reasons that having belief in something greater than ourselves is so powerful. When you believe that there's something greater than you that loves you and is looking out for you, then it's like having that expert with you. This thing that's looking over you, and maybe not everything is going to go perfectly, but they're going to be there with you and there's a reason for it. I know it's really easy to lose your faith and to say, if there was a God, if there was something that loved me, then these things wouldn't happen. I look at my father. My dad has metastatic prostate cancer. And I know that my time with him is limited. I don't know how much time that is. But it has been an incredible blessing. Don't tell my mom that. She won't agree. But I look at my dad and the way that he has changed because of this cancer, and the way that he interacts with people. The way that he looks at the world has changed because he looks at his life differently. And it's affected my life as well. I look at my life and the way that I look at every moment that I spend with my father. Every moment that I spend with my daughter, with my mother, everybody in my life, I look at it differently because it started to make me look at my mortality. It started to make me look at each moment as precious. And to me, that's a blessing. Is there challenges there? Are there difficulties there? Are there things that I wish that I didn't have to experience in this? Of course. But I've found the blessing in it. Now, call it a growth mindset, call it having faith, have it whatever you want, but having a belief will make your life better. And if you choose not to believe in something greater than you, then have a belief in yourself. Have a can-do attitude. Believe that no matter what happens in life, that you have the ability to adapt. You have the ability to recover, to learn, to grow, to develop. You don't have to have a belief in something greater than you in order to develop faith in yourself. And if you choose to have a belief in something greater than you, then continue to build on that. How do you build faith in anything? Through your mind, through your thoughts, through supporting action. Thought, action, and emotion. Those three things, when used together, create powerful effects inside our heart and inside our mind. I know that my life is better now having started to listen to inspiration. There was a time in my life where I looked at my life and did not see a benefit to having a belief system, to having a religion. I felt like it wasn't helping me, and that every path I'd gone down in my life had been negative, that I had had all these terrible things happen even though I had faith. And I wasn't looking for it. And yet it found me. I know that there is a God that loves me, that is looking out for me, that gives me trials that I wouldn't normally pick for myself, that gives me growth that I wouldn't normally pick for myself, and also gives me blessings that I can't imagine. Blessings that I don't even see until years down the road. You can develop more faith or more belief. You can develop a knowing and an inspiration where you're able to listen to that voice inside of yourself. All of those things can be developed. I know you can do it, and I believe in you. Until next week, remember that you are not alone.